Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this, which I think is going to be a really thought-provoking session on the issues facing international recruits. I'm Lee Stribling. I'm Head of Operations at the Care Workers Charity, and I'm really delighted to be chairing the session today. I'm going to ask the panelists to now introduce themselves to you, describing their role and telling us something about why they're interested in the topic. So we'll start with Melanie.
Good afternoon. My name is Melanie Weatherly. I'm the co-chair of the Care Association Alliance, and I've been leading the work supporting international recruits in the East Midlands for about 18 months now. And I want to be here today because I want to make it clear what a wonderful contribution our overseas recruits have been to the sector and how important it is that we support them to thrive.
Thank you, Melanie. Rachel?
Hi, thank you for having me. My name's Rachel. I'm the CEO of Lifted. We are a care provider and we have some brilliant sponsored staff that we have recruited. But I was frustrated by some of the experiences that care workers were having. And so we launched Sponsor Switch, which is just www.sponsorswitch.com. And it's a place that exploited care workers who've been brought to this country and not been given the life they were promised can go to find ethical employers. And for the care providers who employ those staff, we manage all of the operations, all of the compliance, and pay all the upfront home office fees. And to support the development of that platform, we surveyed 1,100 displaced care workers here in the UK and had some really interesting findings. So here to talk a bit about that and also to share a bit about the support that we can provide and celebrate the contribution that sponsored care workers and international care workers make to the UK.
Thank you. Taylor?
Hi, I'm Taylor McCarthy. I'm the head of grants at the Care Workers Charity. So it's my team that assess all the applications that we get in. And about a year and a half ago, we got a real increase in applications from international recruits who are being exploited in various different ways: financial, emotional, physical. So I'm here to talk a bit about what we've seen and the conversations I'm having with local authorities across the UK who are trying to help those international recruits that have been treated poorly.
Thank you, Taylor. Mohammed?
Hi, myself Mohammed, and I'm working as a senior carer in Ipswich, Suffolk. And I'm here to write about these things, like how the care workers are being exploited, because I can tell you because it's all happened to me. And yeah, that's all about me. I came here as a student, but I switched my sponsor, and yeah, that's all about me.
Thank you. Scott?
Thank you, Mom. Excuse me. Nice to be here with everybody again, albeit under slightly invidious circumstances. So I've worked at Citizens Advice, Northamptonshire, Oxfordshire for the last, for most of the last 6 years. I'm head of volunteering at Criminal Justice Advocacy, another charity, and also responsible for tenders at the Avocado Foundation, a major BAME entity in London, if not the entire southwest or southeast, excuse me. I have extensive experience dealing with African economic migrants. I myself, as you can hear from my accent, was on a tier 2 visa when I first moved to the UK when I was about 19. So I've seen a really detrimental, disconcertingly depreciating valuation attached to the way the Home Office looks at these sorts of schemes, unfortunately, going from a very highly skilled migrant variant to the current one that is almost totally unregulated and unaudited. So looking forward to contribute my subject matter expertise.
Thank you very much. So before we begin, I'd like to add some context to international recruitment. And I've got some stats from Skills for Care's workforce data. And also just there's a commentary from the Oxford Migration Observatory, and just a few points of that I want to share with some of you. So looking at Skills for Care stats, between March 22 and March 23, around 70,000 people started direct care providing roles in the independent sector, having arrived in the UK during that period. During that period, 192,000 posts in social care were filled by non-EU nationals. That's a significant number. I'm sure you'll agree with me. The Oxford Migration Observatory said that care visas have also been one of the reasons for the really high migration into the UK between 2022 and 23. By 2023, around half of visas granted to workers under the skilled worker route went to care or senior care workers, and the Home Office estimates that 120,000 family members of care workers received visitors and visas in 2023, joining those 100,000 applicants on the scheme, which kind of gives us a bit of perspective on some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So many of these people who want to come to work in the UK would previously have come as a main applicant, and a dependent might also have come to work in the care sector. And now, because of the changes, some of those dependents will have to get have to get care worker visas if they want to come in anyway. And we know that some care workers with children will now have to leave their children behind with grandparents, for example, which is quite a common phenomenon in global migration, but also that has a knock-on effect on the impact on the care worker that comes across. And I'm sure we'll touch on that as well. So we're going to start by me asking a question of the panel, which is, in your area of work, what have you been seeing in terms of supporting international recruits? And we're going to start with Mohammed, who's going to give us the perspective from a care worker. Over to you, Mohammed.
Yes, thank you very much. To support the care workers, like we need to be, give them at least a job security, like at least the security to live inside, like they're free to do their work. Not like there are some care companies who are exploiting their employees, the care workers. They are not getting paid. They're like even like 4 to 5 months. They're still waiting for their money, just because they can't stand out because they have been sponsored. So they know that they're not others, more sponsors available in the market. So they can't speak on their behalf. And the other thing is like about the sponsorship, like the companies getting losing their sponsorship license, who are working, and the one who doesn't provide any work, they already got their sponsorship, and their sponsorship is running so smooth. I don't know like how this working. So yeah, these are some facts. Like if we are giving the proper companies a free hand to to do the business, and the care workers their job security, I think this industry can be better.
Thank you, Mohammed. Rachel?
Thank you. So I think there's a few different things that we're seeing. So when we surveyed displaced care workers, 20% of them told us they'd never done any work for their sponsor. So they were brought to this country, they were promised a job, and then that job didn't materialize. And as Melanie, I think, was saying before, it could be for two reasons. It could be a direct attempt to exploit people and charge them for their certificates of sponsorship, which is what we're seeing. Or it could be people who genuinely thought they were going to have the work, but the nature of care is that the number of hours available to provide care to people does change quite quickly, and then that work isn't available. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing I would say that I think is not talked about enough is the importance of driving. So what we're seeing is this huge demand for sponsored care workers in the domiciliary care sector, but 90% of care providers need those care workers to be able to drive. So that means they need to have either a UK license or an international license that is not expired, and they also have to have a car. And 90% of the care workers that apply through our platform just don't have those things. And there isn't currently any availability to support them with those things because it's a financial incentive. So we started lending money to carers to pay for that, but there's only so much that we can lend. So I think that's a big gap. And then the last thing I would say is issues around childcare. So many people did bring their children over and didn't actually have formal childcare arrangements in place, which, as you've mentioned, is quite different in the UK versus some of the countries that people perhaps came from. And childcare is super expensive here, and they're still having to work early morning shifts and evening shifts in order to make sure that they meet the minimum hour requirement that the Home Office set. And I think that's another place where actually we could learn a lot from other countries in terms of how they have more support with childcare and more support in the family unit. So those, I think, are kind of three of the main issues that we've seen, and that we are doing our best to tackle. So care workers that have lost their license, care providers who've lost their license, for example, those care workers will typically come to our platform and we'll match them with other care providers, but we can only match them if they have the skills that care providers need. And I'd say driving is the main one that really feels like it's missing.
Thank you. Melanie?
Thank you. I agree with what my colleagues have already said. I think driving is a particular one, Rachel. And I think employers of sponsored workers need to address that on day one, because it's easy to think, right, they've got 364 days that they can continue driving on their international license. I mean, I would say employers of sponsored workers should check their own responsibilities from day one if someone is driving on their behalf, and that might make them think they could do an introductory lesson. Just let's see where you're up to. Are you going to find it easy to pass your driving test, or are we going to need to help you? But if you don't address that until they've been here for a year and a week, it's too late because they can't drive. So I think that's a big thing. The other thing that, and childcare should get better now that the universal offer on childcare is available rather than it being means tested. So that, but again, childcare is not easy to find. It's expensive and it's not very easy. But maybe actually that isn't just a problem for our international workers. In home care, the availability of childcare that enables people to work, parents to work, is a problem regardless of where you came from. And maybe we need to lobby for that to make it better for all of our care workers. But I think the other thing that is starting to worry me, as our international recruits have been here for a while, is their access to learning and development. They can be funded through the new, what used to be Workforce Development Fund, and I can't remember what the new name is, but they can't access apprenticeships until they've been here for 3 years. They can't access anything that is funded through the Department of Education mainstream education budget. And when you first arrive, that's probably not a problem because the care provider will give you the training you need. But I found that a lot of my international recruits are really keen to get on, and it's prohibitively expensive for the provider to buy the funding, to buy the training, and none of the normal mainstream funding is accessible to them until they've been resident for 3 years. And I think that is something that if we want to enable our international recruits to provide the best quality care and to grow during the 3 or 5 years that they're with us, that's something we need to fix, and something that could be fixed by government.
Thank you, Melanie. Taylor?
So with my work, I often speak to care associations, local authorities who are all really aware of the issues that international recruits are facing. And I've spoken to a lot of really good care providers who will provide a buddy system for international recruits that come over. So, they've got that support system there. Like we're saying, they can learn the lingo, they can learn our cultural differences. I can only imagine what it is like to go into a different country that's just completely different to yours, and you have to learn all the little small things. Like, I was speaking to a care worker and she said she was, I think it was supported living, and she went to go to the service user and they asked for beans on toast. And in her head, she goes, what the hell is beans on toast? It's small things like that, if we help with the integration into society, that helps improve the relationship between the end user and the care worker. And we're speaking to lots of local authorities at the moment who would like to help provide funds for those displaced care workers, because obviously they have no recourse to public funding either. So if they are displaced, they've got 60 days to find somewhere new, and in between that time, they're not earning anything. So I think, I've spoken to care associations and local authorities who are really aware of that. And we're having a lot of good conversations to hopefully improve and kind of widen how we can help those that are in need.
Thank you, Taylor. Scott?
Thank you, Mom. So does everybody know what a Section 21 eviction is? I'm just curious. Yeah, okay. So when you get one of those, you are required by statute to give a booklet that signposts the evictee to appropriate resources. Now, working in this space as long as I have, I'm stunned, to be honest, and disgusted that we have no such provision for people who are sponsors or sponsees that require the same sort of signposting to adequate support like Citizens Advice. Most people, obviously, of this sort of economic migrant circumstance has no idea what the word Citizens Advice means, what community law services, where they would go for support. There is an intransigently unabated fear in reporting anything to do with sponsorship because of the consequences, right? So I report my sponsor for not giving me work. I've been here for a year, like some of my clients. They're going to lose their sponsorship. They have 60 days to switch sponsorship, which is almost impossible. And these people have no income. They have rent to pay. They have children. They have no access, like Taylor, I'm glad pointed out, their NRPF designations. So they're disqualified from all the public benefits that all of us on this call might be qualified for if we lose our job. Excuse me. So my work has expanded into charitable grant funding for individuals that obviously can't rely on applications for universal credit. So I myself, and this is nothing to be proud of, have dispersed over like 90,000 pounds through the work I've done to hundreds of migrant families. But we're talking 500 pounds each, which is not enough to live on, certainly for a family of four, for more than a week or two, you know, at a push. And I find that disbursement volume is nothing to be proud of, like I said, because it's increasing, and I expect this will get much worse, sadly. And I'm only one person, you know, I can do a grant application in a couple of hours, but you know, if you've got hundreds of people, it is just me in the East Midlands doing this sort of thing. So my focus is on the policy shift and the paradigm shift on how the Home Office looks at sponsorship vetting and post-qualification auditing. You know, they're completely given carte blanche to do whatever they want. There is no promise of hours. Once they're awarded a certificate of sponsorship, they have almost no, you know, ostensible adherence requirements by the Home Office.
Thank you, Scott. So our next question is, what are the issues facing international recruits? And I'd really like to hear from the panelists of things that we haven't mentioned in the first section. So Taylor, we'll start with you. What are the issues facing international recruits?
So what we've been seeing in our applications is it's the cost of living in the UK. I think compared to other places in Europe who provide better wages and a better kind of support system for the care sector, it's exactly that. We get applications coming in from care workers who have come over with all their clothing and they've realised it's a lot colder in this country. They then have to buy a coat for themselves, for their children, school uniforms, you know, them growing out of their shoes everywhere. It's little things like that that I think international recruits really, really struggle with. And I know we touched on it lightly, but it's the exploitation. I mean, given the nature of what we do, we often see the kind of extreme side of things, but we've heard stories of care workers being locked in the attic and having locks put on there, having locks put on cupboards so that they can't eat. We've had people email us saying that they want to change their sponsor, but their current sponsor is threatening them with a £10,000 fine. It's awful. It's, you know, we've had care providers, and I know there are some good pet care providers out there as well, but I'm just going off what we've seen. You know, care providers charging them for accommodation, for their food, for their car, and pretty much wiping out all of the care workers' monthly pay. So I think it's that. And again, like I said, it's, I think, integration into the community. I mean, we're going to talk about the no dependent rule later, but, you know, if you've got care workers coming over here and they don't have their family as a support system now, then coming over to a country can be really isolating when you don't know, like I said, you don't know the language, you don't know the customs, you don't know where any of the public services are. So I think in general, yeah, it's isolation and it's exploitation, and just the cost of living, I think, is a really big one.
Thanks, Taylor. Scott?
Thank you, Mom, again. And I, you know, concur with Taylor's subject matter expertise. I think she's probably been doing this more full time than I have. And I'm glad to be part of the conversation. I'd say again, I think on the coattails of the, well, ongoing cost of living crisis afflicting everybody, exploitation is concomitant with that, especially for disenfranchised communities that are on tier 2 spousal visas, dependent visas, etc. There is, like I said, I think in my previous narrative, a failure to adhere to employment statute, because again, most sponsors know that their sponsees will not challenge them because they can't, generally, whether the government says it or not. I mean, on the Citizens Advice website, for example, they have an entire page now dedicated to how to report a sponsor that isn't giving you working hours, and there is no gray area. It basically jumps from, if you're having a problem with work and you're a tier 2 sponsee, report it to the Home Office. The Home Office will terminate your visa, and then you're on your own. That's highly unlikely to be a consequential solution in any lens. And again, I think access to what we refer to as tier 3 legal support is extremely inaccessible. Immigration law services, and I'm seeking qualification, I'm not qualified yet, but I've done the training, is extremely expensive. Now, if you've got no income, there is going to be almost no prospect of legal aid for this sort of thing to fund a change in sponsorship designation, sadly. The other, I think, final issue I'll mention is the fact that we have to sponsorship scheme totally. It has to include the provision of information for every migrant who doesn't know, as soon as they step foot on British soil, the terms and agencies like Citizens Advice, Migrant Help, Settle.uk, and finally, worker bond scheme. So all of us here are probably covered by some sort of unemployment insurance. These people are not, sadly. If we insist that sponsors who think that this is just a cash generating machine, getting people to come to the UK to fulfill these jobs, and then that's the end of their responsibilities. If we insist that they have 6 months financial subsistence fund for these migrants, I think we would see a huge deterioration in abuse.
Thank you, Scott. Rachel?
Thank you. So I think maybe it's helpful to say a little bit about some of the issues that are being faced and some of the things that are being done about them, so that people kind of have an understanding of support that is available. So on the cost of living, everyone that goes through the Sponsor Switch platform, we've negotiated a cost of living discount program. So people get money off their groceries, money off their petrol, they get free online GP appointments, free counselling, which is really important. And basically the way that we're funded is that employers pay us a monthly fee. And so that monthly fee covers that support for the care worker. Similarly, around housing transfer, we liaise directly with the landlords because we are seeing housing discrimination on the basis of nationality and ethnicity, which obviously is wrong. So our team will liaise directly with the landlords on their behalf. And then in terms of cultural awareness and kind of training around toast and poached eggs and baked beans, we have a training course called Life in the UK, and we deliver that training. And I guess I want to mention those things not kind of as a plug for Sponsor Switch, but I guess as a recognition that care providers are willing to support these initiatives. And for many of them, the care workers that have come into their business have transformed their lives. And I think and transformed their businesses and transformed the lives of the people that they're supporting. And I think there's a bit of an emphasis on, people struggling to get support. And that is true, but make no mistake, international care workers that have come to this country, these are resilient people. They came here to make a new life for them and their family. And they will often go to extraordinary lengths to make that possible. And if we just give them a little bit of support and point them in the right direction, they will, they are able to find their own way. So for example, in terms of immigration advice and support, all the switching through our platform, our candidates are never charged anything. And we often have people contacting us saying, is it a scam? Because it's free. And in fact, the other day we got blocked by someone saying it's a scam because it's free. And we have to say, it's free because we charge the employer. So it's not that it's free completely, there is a cost to it, but it's free to the care worker. And with that support, most care workers don't need immigration advice to change their sponsorships. And then just the last piece on that, I think around Melanie's point about progression, which I think is really, really important, and maybe we'll come on later in the discussion, is we have a huge opportunity in the care sector. Over the last year, 75,000 people come to the UK, and some of the educational backgrounds that they have, we could only dream of attracting in UK candidates. You know, fully qualified GPs, fully qualified nurses working as care workers here in the UK. We've got 5 years before their visas run out to prove to them why they should build their career here in social care, that it's not a stepping stone to something else. It is itself an amazing future. And one of the things that I'm really keen to get people together to work on is a way of turning talented care workers into registered managers, because there's an enormous shortage of care managers here in the UK. And these are people that have proven their resilience in bags, which is what they need to have to be great care managers. And so I think there are lots of issues facing people, but at least personally, we're trying to be really proactive in addressing those issues, and the people themselves are being proactive in addressing those issues. And I think that's making for a great future for the care sector and for the talent within it.
Thank you. Melanie?
Thanks. I think I agree with a lot of what's been said, but I think it's important that there's the right information is out there for all the people that are trying to support these workers. So at the moment, if your sponsor's license is revoked, before your visa is cancelled, you will receive an email from UKVI giving you the details of the government-sponsored, paid-for email to contact to be picked up, getting some support, because there are some fantastic providers around like Sponsor Switch, but not all care providers can afford Rachel's fees, and not all care workers would you be able to place because they need that bit of polishing. But that email comes out from UKVI separate from the curtailment of the visa, and I think it's really important that everybody that's out there supporting them, like Scott and people like Mohammed, share with all of their colleagues. If you get this email, follow the link. It's not a scam. It's not a route to the Home Office. It's all done through local authorities and care associations who are independent of government. And in the East Midlands, we actually share the email for people who have been exploited, but the Home Office haven't caught up with their employer yet as well. And because I think right at the beginning, Scott, people that Skills for Care, Citizens Advice have been saying, shop your employer, shop your employer. But very early on, we recognise you're not going to shop your employer if you've not got a new job. So we've been out there saying, right, find a new job and then shop your employer, because we need to bring that exploitation to an end, but we can't expect people to throw themselves either into a no income situation or even worse, potential deportation. And I think if we can all share that message, tell us. I would not go to the Home Office until I'd found more work for people. So I think we just all need to work on that. And I think the other thing is preparation in the home country, or telling people when you're interviewing someone from overseas that it's not the streets are not paved with gold. Yes, it looks like the salaries are higher, but the cost of living is higher. And I don't think we always make it clear to people. And we need to remember that prior to the change in the shortage occupation list, it was professionals who moved. And most professionals, Scott's moved. I used to work in another country. You know your rights. You've got you're articulate, you're assertive. If you are coming in at GCE level education to take a care worker's job, you need a whole different kind of support when you arrive. We need to take you and nurture you and recognise that you are not going to stand up for your own responsibilities. People we take from university who used to have a tier 4 and now have a tier 2 sponsor, whole different ball game. They can stand up for themselves. But if you came over having sold up, even if it's an ethical recruitment, it's not free to move home. It's not free to move across the rest of the world. We need to be there and saying to them, you're in a caring profession. We care for you. We will support you. But employers need to recognise that sponsoring an overseas worker is not cheap and it's not easy, but you do get back what you put in.
Thank you, Melanie. Mohammed?
Yes, yeah, I completely agree with all of them. So the two things I want to discuss is, first of all, the care workers don't have the power or don't have freedom to, to switch their sponsor. Like what I was thinking, like if there's a huge gap still in the care worker industry. Like in my area, there are multiple jobs available for the care workers, but we don't have freedom to do that job because we are stuck somewhere, and our employers take advantage of that. Like they are forcing us to work because like they don't find anything else. They are doing discrimination. They have their favorism to people. If they need off, they force you to work because our company is owned by the other nationality. So we are facing discrimination also. So like whatever it is, like it's been 2 years I'm working for a company. I'm giving favor, but still now, like I'm afraid to say them no, like I can't do this here because the next day they're gonna say that sorry, we don't have work for you. So that's the thing. Like if they make a sponsor easy for care workers, like they can do any job. But like before that, I know they have like I think earlier 2023, late 2023, they stop it. The care workers have authority to go to any employer to work more than 20 hours legally. So but now like they are again come to 20 hours again. So now like to like straight away that they're exploiting us, not being paid. We can't raise our voices like please pay us, otherwise they said that okay, we don't have money, do whatever you want. I face these things. I'm still facing these things. So like we have cost of living to do, we have like insurances, we have phones, we have mobile data, everything, but they don't care about anything because like we are being treated as servants, to be honest here. So that's the thing, because I applied to multiple places. I've been selected because I have I'm being graduated from here. I have master in business analytics from University of Essex, but I'm working in this industry because I want to make some changes in this industry. I'm doing NVQ level 3 by my own, but nobody cares about that.
Thank you,
So
Melanie.
yeah, thank you.
Right, we're going to look at something really positive now, which is the benefits of international recruitment, because there are a lot of benefits, and it's important for us to have a balanced view during this conversation. So, Melanie, I'm going to ask you to start us off on what the benefits are of international recruitment.
I think the benefits of international recruitment, other than the obvious one, which is we are an industry which is short of staff, I think they bring a different perspective. They change your workforce, whether you want them to or not, particularly if you're in an area of the country which is not exactly multicultural. I think one of the other benefits is that they are people who are, as Rachel was saying, they're resilient, they're committed, they want to do the job, which I think brings a different perspective to the people who they provide care and support for. It also gives the staff, the service users, see a different kind of person. They see people with different history. It can be very boring if you're in your own home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you only see everybody that looks the same, sounds the same, has the same life history. One of the unexpected benefits we found is that some of our service users say it's really good to hear about different parts of the world, and particularly our older gentlemen who may have been to other parts of the world, maybe during national service. They found different things to talk about. We've even got service users who are learning small smatterings of languages from all over the world so they can say hello and goodbye and feel polite. So I think, yeah, the obvious one is they are people who want to work and are able to work, particularly if it's younger people who don't have any dependents. Work is the sole purpose, is the key thing of their life. They want to get involved, they want to get on. And the graduates who come across often challenge one's way of running a company, which again can be good for you. I've had people with masters in public health who go out and do a round of home care and come back and say, why do you do this? This is the exact opposite of prevention. And it's like, yeah, well, when you've been here for more than a couple of weeks, you can tell me how to remodel my... But I do think that's been great. And I think the international recruits tell us that where they have found a good employer, it has enabled them to transform their lives. They are doing things that they wouldn't be able to do if they hadn't come here. So I think there's lots of benefits to it, but we have to get it right. We have to get over this issue that we've got at the moment and get everybody that has come to us from overseas working in the right place in our sector in the right way and feeling like they're valued. And on a sort of more trivial, I just love the fact that I have loads of young men who listen to my every word. I've never had that in my workforce before, but because I found that certainly with our young male service users, international recruits, I don't think they realise quite how much they would miss home. The girls either do know it or they cope with it more, but I found that our young men, our late 20s men, just need that feeling that somebody cares.
Yeah.
But you get so much back from them. It's just so responsive, I think, would be the way I would describe them.
Lovely, thank you. So I'm going to ask Rachel to come in next. And are there any other benefits to the ones that Melanie's talked about that you'd like to mention particularly?
No, I mean, Melanie said so many of the great things, and I agree with a lot of those as well. So I'll say some more of the kind of commercial benefits, but that doesn't mean I don't also agree with everything that Melanie
Sure.
said already. I just wanted to say one thing before I do that, which I think is quite important, which is to Melanie's point before about getting the right information out there. The 60 days that you're given after a sponsor license is revoked, if you apply for a new visa, even if that visa is rejected, the clock stops. So if you've got people in a really difficult position, getting them to apply for a visa is a good way of trying to basically extend that clock. So I just wanted to put that out there as something that that I know has helped people. So going back to your question in terms of what are the benefits. So we did some analysis from a care provider perspective, because as Melanie said, sponsorship is not cheap. Although one of the things that we do is we pay all the upfront home office fees. So there's no upfront costs, and there are if you do it yourself, but just to kind of explain that. But we wanted to basically show to care providers, like, what's the business case for sponsored staff? And we found sponsored staff work on average double the number of hours as UK-based staff. So the average care worker in the UK work about 25 hours a week. A sponsored care worker will work about 40 hours a week or more. And that is because that is what the Home Office set as the minimum. So it's kind of contractually in the case. That changes the type of worker that you get because it's a full-time job for them anymore. It's not something they sometimes do part-time. So that changes the kind of work you get. The second thing is the retention rate is twice as high, if not 3 times as high. And what that translates to over 3 years, and we did it obviously accounting for our fees, but if you don't account for our fees, the impact's even bigger, is a profit which is double the profit that you get on a UK-based worker. So you basically get twice the amount of work and twice the amount of profit. And I don't say that because I don't think there's not some great benefits to individuals, but I think we need to talk about that financial benefit, because what we need is care providers that want to employ these people. Like, that's ultimately the thing that will help these people, and we need to make that case. So I think those are some of the benefits. And then the last piece I would just say on that is every care provider you speak to, myself included, really struggles to hire great management, great registered managers, great trainers, great coordinators. As Melanie has said, these are people that absolutely want those roles and want to be pushed into them. And I think people think that you can't sponsor more senior care worker roles or care managers. You absolutely can. The Health and Social Care Visa covers care managers. There's also a category called any other role in health and social care. So you can sponsor at any of those different levels.
Lovely.
You just need to do it properly and get a new certificate of sponsorship. But I think there's, in terms of organisations future-proofing themselves and bringing in that talent, I think there really isn't a better source of talent than the whole world, which is what sponsorship gives you.
Thank you. We're going to start running out of time. So Taylor, can I ask you to give a brief response?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what everyone else has said, but I guess it just gives you new perspectives, a vast array of skilled and experienced care professionals from around the world. And I guess it helped to ensure that services can meet the diverse needs of the care recipients, because, you know, we have people from all over the world in this country. And then if you have the care worker who is from the same culture, for example, speaks the same language, that can vastly improve the health and happiness of the end care user. So yeah, I guess, yeah, just everyone's pretty much covered it, I think.
Thank you. Mohammed, anything to add to that?
Yes, the benefit of international recruit, one more thing is like the international worker who came here, they know the values, and they're more, passionate to work. like they're more curious to do work rather than like someone here, and because we are working with vulnerable people, so we understand our job description and everything, and we can't just move straight away, so we can't leave our clients vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
the
you.
other thing. And as this industry is least funded, so that's the another benefit of international recruit, that they can hire on a minimum wage rate.
Thank you.
Yeah. But
Scott,
yeah.
anything to add?
I would just say, if you can see the motto on my office wall, which says, "With God, all things are possible," Matthew 19:26. I think it has been since the age of 10 that I myself have been drawn to multiculturalism, and this sort of work in the community. You know, I've been doing it now for 29 years, not legal casework, but the engagement with cultures all over the world. And I think it speaks to our human intelligence capital in this business, in this country, especially in this space.
Thank you. So now I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the rule that international social care workers can't bring dependents to the UK. We've got about 20 minutes left in the webinar, and we've got another question after this. So if I could ask you to keep it brief, that would be great. Otherwise, we're going to run out of time, and I'd hate us to end halfway through a conversation. So Rachel, do you want to give us your thoughts?
Oh man, it's a hard question, because on the one hand, obviously on a human level, separating people from their children and their loved ones is heartbreaking. On the other hand, the exponential increase in people coming to this country, all bringing their children and their partners, and there being no investment and support in public services to support those people, puts everyone in a difficult position. You know, if, for example, like we recruited 25 care workers for one care provider, and it's a small community. 25 kids showing up at that school, and most of my brothers and sisters, has a huge impact on that local service. And then what that does is drive public opposition to migration, which is what we've seen become a political issue. And it's also not fair on those families because there's not support for those kids.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I feel really badly about it. On the other hand, I think that without investment in public services, there has to be something. The other thing I would say is, we saw firsthand that when care workers did bring their children across straight away, they really, really struggled. And actually, we have now advised the majority of them, even before the rule change, don't bring your children for the first 6 months. Give yourself time to settle, time to earn enough money, and then bring your family if you can. So and then the other thing I would say is, for a lot of these people, they come here because they want to put money back home to support their children's education. So their children is their motivation, whether they're here with them or whether their children are back home where they're from originally. So I'm sorry, that's not a straight yes or no answer. I think the answer is we need migration to this country, but we need investment in public services to be able to support that migration. And it was happening without that investment. And so it probably makes sense to have a pause, but it doesn't seem a sustainable solution forever, not least because we need to compete in a global talent market.
Okay, thank you. Melanie?
Well, so I agree with Rachel. It's difficult, but I think to expect people to choose between looking after their loved ones or our loved ones is on a human rights basis. It's just wrong. I just wonder if maybe, yes, like you, Rachel, we've always advised people, do not bring your children with day one because you need to settle first. So maybe it would be better to say after 12 months, you can bring your dependents, because that enables a more structured, slow introduction, because we're not going to need another 100,000 people into the care sector. I think last year was an aberration, so I think it probably is smaller numbers. I just think it is wrong, but my understanding is that in the global marketplace, I heard, Rachel, that if you're a nurse, we have to let you bring your dependents, because if we don't, you won't come. But for a care worker, nobody lets you bring your dependents, so it's okay for us not to. And I don't think that's right for the UK. I think that's the wrong stance for the UK to have in terms of its human rights and caring and generally feeling welcoming. But yes, there is no point in bringing in 50 children into a school that's already full. So it's a more complicated than it sounds.
Thank you. Taylor?
So I agree that it's complex. However, we receive emails from people that have been affected by this rule, and it's really heartbreaking. You know, we got an email about a month ago, and a woman had been, her visa had been accepted in March, and obviously that's when the rule changed, and her children have been denied her visa, so she's now working over here on her own. And she's really struggling. Her children, I think they're about one. She's got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And as you were saying, Melanie, I think, how can we expect these people to show our loved ones compassion and empathy when we're not doing the same? So yeah, I don't know. I just, if again, it's with the cost of living and low wages, and now this, I think the UK, it's not as a desirable place to come anymore, I don't think, and that's what we're going to see, reduction in people wanting to come, because why would you, I guess, if you can't bring your family, if you want a better life for you and your family, why would you wouldn't come here if you can't bring them? So
thanks, Taylor. Mohammed, do you want to add anything else to the conversation we've had so far?
Not too much. I completely agree with all of them, because the prospects they are thinking have their own, because they're the different prospects. So like also we can, like we can't afford too many dependents at the moment. And the second thing is like how we can expect someone, to work here and their loved one is there, so they are, sometimes mentally distracted or mentally tortured from there if their children are not be treated properly, or the children are small. So there can be terms and conditions, I think, or but it's complicated.
Thank you. Scott, thoughts from you?
Just in the interest of time, I'll skip this one so we can go on to the next one.
Are you sure?
So we don't. Yeah, positive.
Feel free to add some comments in the chat if you want to. People can see. We have one more question. Before we get to it, just to let everyone who is on this webinar know, you can put questions in the chat facility or the Q&As. I can't guarantee that we're going to be able to get through them, because this has been a really interesting conversation and we've covered a lot of ground. So, but just to let you know that facility is there. Right, so now the final question today is, what should the government do around international recruitment in social care? And I'd like you each to give me one thing, please. And we'll start with you, Scott.
Thank you, Mom. So again, I think to reiterate what I said earlier, I'm working on a call to action that requires sponsors to implement regulated worker bonds. So an unemployment insurance that requires at least a 6-month subsidy on cost of living, because it will do two things. It will obviously provide a stable source of income for sponsees and their families if there is no work, if they fall ill, all well and good that they can get medical care, but there is no income to pay their rent or pay for food, etc. They're still, for lack of a better word, screwed. And then number two, it will also reduce the exploitative surge in sponsors using this as a cash generation scheme, unfortunately, which is not what it is supposed to do. It's supposed to add a knowledge capital to our country, not serve as a people trafficking mechanism that displaces families and then impinges on other social services like citizens advice, the council, housing, food banks, etc. All of which welcome, and I'm one of them, welcome them with open arms, but nevertheless, it is, swings and roundabouts.
Thank you. Rachel?
The government should allow Ofsted registered children's social care providers to sponsor overseas care workers. At the moment, you can only sponsor workers into adult social care. There is a crippling shortage of provision for children with special needs or children who require support in school and social care and in social care settings. And while I totally understand the need to regulate and only allow CQC registered care providers to recruit, inadvertently that has meant that children's social care providers cannot sponsor staff. And I think that is a real mistake.
Thank you. Melanie?
Integrate it with the NHS to make it sustainable. They tend to have region to region contacts, so the ethical bit of it is covered. and it wouldn't cost much more. They're already investing in going over there. Just needs one more airfare. So integrate the international recruitment with the NHS.
Okay, thank you. Mohammed.
Yes, I can add one thing in that, like if government, remove the restriction from from the sponsor to work for only one sponsor,
Okay,
Just a minute, excuse me. So
thank you.
I'm saying that if the government, like if we are a sponsor here, so if we have freedom to to work for any other client, any other employer, so we should have the right to move on if our employer don't have work or if they lose their sponsorship license. The license, the license should be to the employer, not to us, because we have the qualification, we've been trained, and we are working here.
Good point, thank you. Taylor?
So I don't know the intricacies to international recruitment like the rest, but I think I would just echo what the care sector is calling for anyway, which is better pay and better working conditions and treating, international recruits the same way and paying them the same that we do for our UK colleagues, really.
Do any of the panelists have a final thought to share?
And I'll just finish with thank you very much for all the international recruits that have come to join us and have stuck with us through all the intricacies of UKVI not quite knowing what they were doing. And we do value you, we do welcome you. And a message to anybody who is struggling, please get in touch. Please don't be afraid to shop your employer.
Thank you. Mohammed?
Yes, I can only just add this thing, like if we can remove the restriction of in terms of employees, so they can move freely to another job if they are exploiting from one employer to the care workers. But there are some benefits, and they're absolutely exploiting the care workers, which I'm facing right now.
Thank you. Taylor?
Yeah, just to say that there is help out there. We at the Care Workers Charity, we've helped over 12,000 care workers. We've awarded over £6 million, so there is help there. So yeah, just don't be afraid to ask for help, because I've spoken to so many people that are working tirelessly to help those that are struggling.
Thank you. Scott?
I would say to all care workers listening to this, to anybody who's sponsored in general, whether it's on the tier 2 sham scheme or not, reach out. If you trust your instincts, and you should, if you're being mistreated, you probably are. In my experience of doing this for over 10 years, I'm dealing with inquiries from every imaginable demographic. Come see somebody like me. I pledge the following aphorism to everybody who comes to meet me, and I think I'm pretty friendly for 6'5", even though I'm on crutches. I'm at your humble service, and I guarantee you so are my colleagues.
Thank you very much for that. Rachel?
I guess the first thing I would say, if you're being exploited by your care provider, find a new one. There are loads of great care providers out there that want to welcome you with open arms. So if you go to our website, we will help you. My best advice in terms of getting a new job with a new care provider is learn to drive. I know it sounds mundane, but it will open the number of jobs that you can get access to hugely. Buy a car if you can, or get a car on credit if it's possible. It's not possible for everyone. It's a very practical piece of advice, but I can't tell you how many people come to us looking for help, and if they don't have a car, it's much harder to help them. So that's the one thing I would say. And I would just echo what Melanie said. There are lots of reasons to feel bad about Britain over the last few years, but seeing the passion of people that want to come to this country and contribute to our social care system and look after the people we love most when they can't look after themselves. I got into the care sector because I was a young carer for my mum, and seeing the passion and dedication that these people are bringing and the energy that they're bringing to our care sector, we can be nothing but grateful. And it's certainly one of the biggest privileges of my life to help support people to make that move. And we should just be extremely grateful. But we should give them tangible sources of support. So if they are looking for a new role, then do hustle up at Sponsor Switch or many of the other organisations that can support people as well.
Thank you. I always remember when I was working and bringing in the Filipino workers that I went to visit a care home one day where some of these staff were working, and I was watching a group of ladies in the lounge, and they all got up to look out of the window, and it got very exciting. There was a bit of a flurry, and they all said, he's here, he's here. And I thought, what famous person's coming to visit the care home that I don't know about? And it was a young male care worker with an amazing voice. And he used to start his shift singing. He'd learnt all the English songs that the people in the care home liked, and he would start his shift singing. And I've never forgotten that. He made such a difference to the people he was supporting. And to me, that's what international recruitment is all about. And the more we can do to enable people to become those carers, they benefit, the whole of society benefits, and the people they care for benefit. I would just like to also thank our panelists so much for giving up your time to participate in this really important topic. I particularly appreciate Mohammed's attendance today. Thank you, Mohammed, for sharing and sharing some of the things from your perspective as a care worker. It's been a really interesting and a really thought-provoking session, and I've really enjoyed sharing it. I didn't know I was going to be sharing it till earlier today, and boy, I'm pleased I have. And thank you all so much for your time. And I hope that everybody who's viewed the webinar has found it as interesting, thought-provoking, and hopefully as inspiring as I know I have. Thank you, everybody.